just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to another episode of the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. I'm Joe DeLeone here with Ryan Roberts in a sporadic manner, as we're usually giving you the shows one at a time, but we've been taking a couple pauses in between here as we're wrapping up basically what is the remainder of our position groups and also wrapping up this linebacker group. Probably going to spill into next week a little bit. But today we've got a fun matchup of scouting reports for linebackers. Jack Campbell from Iowa, Noah Sewell from Oregon, two massive linebackers, complete opposites of the first two guys that we talked about. Ryan, these guys are big dudes, and it was fun to watch both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because you're right, they're stylistically, Campbell and Sewell are very different. But I guess the comparison, Joe, is that each of them are about 250 pounds, right? So it's just looks a little different, obviously.
Very different body types.
Yes, very different body types. But we wanted to bring you, since we talked about the more athletic linebackers on the last show, Henry To'oTo'o and Trenton Simpson, decided to get some of the big, more traditional linebackers in this one. So it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be a little interesting on this one.
Yeah, both these guys, I don't think can play anything besides Mike linebacker. Is it too much of a reach to say? Because I just don't know if they move well enough to play will or to play on the outside.
I think they're both preferred Mikes. This is a hot take, I guess, Joe. I guess we're starting with a little bit of a hot take.
Okay.
I actually think Sewell would be a better will linebacker than Jack Campbell would. Is that weird to you?
No, because I think Jack Campbell does a better job, I think, leading on plays. And I think that Noah...
I think Sewell's a little better in pursuit than Campbell is.
We'll get into this. Maybe that makes my evaluation of Sewell a little different with that in mind. Because he was playing Mike at Oregon, but you're talking about how him in pursuit. And now that I think about his better plays were when he was the cleanup guy, not when he was the lead tackler.
Don't disagree.
Not always, but
no. I mean, I think there's definitely more flashes of pursuit in Sewell's film than because Jack Campbell. Because I know we're not going to get super into it yet, but like Jack Campbell's a solid athlete. Like I would call him a solid to good athlete. Like he's not a bad athlete in any stretch of the imagination. Just I want him as the battering ram. I don't want him being the pursuit player. That's all.
Right. We're going to get into these two guys. Before we do, though, folks, I want to tell you about BetOnline. My gambling addiction, just joking, don't actually have a gambling addiction, but I'm not able to gamble today, Ryan. There's no games on. I almost bet on a WNBA game, but
there are games on then.
There was on a WNBA game on in the middle of the day, which was I don't know how you don't schedule that at night with no other sports on, but that's a separate issue. It's been a rough couple of days, though. I need baseball to come back so I can get back into betting on it. And if you're like me and you have some fun betting on baseball, make sure you do it at BetOnline, where you can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including NBA Summer League, Major League Baseball, and the latest fighting news, and even next season's early NFL futures. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE to get that bonus. Get into the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Ryan. Starting with Jack Campbell, Iowa, the taller of the two, 6'4" and change, 245 plus pounds is what he's listed at Iowa. And holy shit, this dude is massive. He is... Here's how I think I would characterize him. I was trying so goddamn hard not to allow my bias to seep into this. And I hope you're proud of me because I was trying so hard. I kind of came down to earth when I would put my final thoughts on my notes on him. But he is an interesting evaluation, and I think that he provides value and could be a really good Mike linebacker. But outside of that, he doesn't really provide much positional versatility. But you ask him to play inside the box, and I think he's fantastic. I think he's a great tackler. I think he hits holes hard. Not an amazing, amazing reaction time type guy that evaluates things super quickly. But I think that he's fantastic as a Mike linebacker.
I think of a good way to start with this, Joe, because I think that we see Jack Campbell pretty similarly. is the verified measurables on Jack is 6'4" and 3/8, 248 pounds, 32 and 3/8 inch arms, and he has nearly a 79-foot wingspan, 78 and 3/4. So this is a large human being. I would say this, Joe, if he was 248 last season, man, he carries it well. I'm looking at him.
He looks like a slim tight end out there.
He looks like, you know what his body type is similar to Leighton Vander Esch. Like, I feel like he could easily be 260 pounds and that would not hurt his athleticism at all. Like, he could definitely be 255 to 260, which is a very throwback style, right? Like, you don't see those guys. I mean, you see every once in a while a Leighton Vander Esch, a Zaven Collins, like those bigger bodied linebackers, but you don't see it too often. And this kid was obviously just came off of a fantastic year for Iowa, 143 total tackles he had on the season, which was just a fantastic number. If you dig into his background a little bit, he's an Iowa kid, Cedar Falls. I'm assuming it's a little bit of a smaller high school. Joe, his senior year, 168 total tackles his senior year.
Nutty.
Also a basketball player and a track athlete for the school. He won.
Dude, he was probably posting up dudes with absolute aggression. I couldn't even imagine what that was like.
I wanted to look up his track background too. I guarantee he was like a javelin thrower, all this type of stuff, but didn't get time to look that up. You want to hear a good one? He won as a junior, earning the team Golden Hammer Award. So his team has a Golden Hammer Award, apparently, man, which goes to the top defensive player.
Oh, that makes sense.
Goes to the top defensive player. So this kid is a Iowa kid, born and bred. I'm assuming, I would love to go look back at his high school profile because I'm going to assume, and I could be completely wrong, that he was probably an underdeveloped kid. I guarantee he was probably like 215 pounds when he got to Iowa or something, like a smaller kid. I guarantee, because he was the best athlete on the team, right? So he comes to Iowa as a Iowa kid, and he has developed now over the last couple years, played a bunch in the 2020 kind of shortened season, but then last year, obviously, he exploded. So some of the things that we see very similarly, he plays with great aggressiveness, and he is a pure downhill player, right? Like, he wants to quick trigger, get downhill, take on blocks, get off blocks, and he has good length to extend and stack and shed at the point of attack. And he's a really good tackler. Doesn't miss many tackles on film at all. And I think he has decent range because he's got those longer legs. He's got a little bit of range to him. My only hang up on him, and I would love to hear your opinion on this, is despite him having this size, he is a little bit thinner. So I thought the power profile was a little hit or miss, to be honest. Sometimes taking on blocks, I was just kind of like, it wasn't as good as you would think a traditional Mike backer would be. I think that there's still good stuff in it, but I do think he needs to get a little bit stronger, in my opinion.
Right, and I think that comes with him adding size. So, like, he's listed at 246 or whatever, 248 or whatever you said he was, but he looks leaner than that. So he looks and kind of plays like he's not as strong as he possibly could be. So that's positive to me to see a guy built like that maybe works up to 255, 260, and he's got a lot more brute strength to him. He's not really I think to characterize his athletic profile, like you mentioned earlier, this is an old school Mike linebacker, the way that he's built, the way that he moves. Yep. He moves better than an old school Mike linebacker, but not twitchy per today's standards for the usual linebacker that we see in the NFL. But I think that he still has value because I think he can step right in right away and provide an impact.
Yeah, no, I think he has value for sure. I think for me, very simply, I don't think that he's a high upside player, right? Because, he doesn't make a ton of splashy plays. I think he only had 3.5 tackles for loss last year. So he's not making a ton of plays in the backfield. And in pass coverage, it's solid. Like, he has decent zone instincts, but he's not going to be a guy that is going to play man-to-man or do a ton of, like he's not going to be a cover 2 mid-hole dropper. Like, that's not going to be what he is, right? He, I think, can do enough for you to not feel like it's right, and not to feel like it's a deterrence to your defense, but it's never going to be a plus, in my opinion. This is your traditional Mike, old school thumper, and I think if he increases his power profile, then this could be a good football player at the next level. I think he could be a starting Mike. I think he has that type of upside because he plays physically, he gets downhill, he has enough range, and I think there's just a really instinctive type of variety of player to a Jack Campbell. So I like Jack Campbell. I do. I think he's a good football player.
Yeah, and as you all know, folks that listen to the show, I'm a massive hack, and I am obsessed with big players.
Sure are.
So that automatically gives him a slight boost. I think for me, a Jack Campbell who has the production, which is I think really underrated for not, it's overvalued with linebackers is what I should be saying. Production is often overvalued when evaluating linebackers because you could have like a Ben Boulware, like a guy that's just a horrible athlete, just not a good athlete, but just racks up so many tackles because he's a great college linebacker and that doesn't translate to the next level. But I think he's got the physical traits, not being like some short, stocky, goofy white guy that's playing Mike for this Iowa defense, which is kind of what we're used to seeing. Instead, we've got a big, rangy athlete. I'd be willing to take him in round 2. I think that is reasonable. I think that there's still, despite an advancement towards defensive coordinators wanting to modernize their defenses and have more speedy, fast guys, there's still old school thought processes, even in the youngest of evaluators and general managers. Teams are still going to value a guy like this, a big Mike linebacker, especially because there's so few these days.
We actually agree on this one, Joe. Literally, I was going to say that I think he could be a top 50 pick because I think there's I don't think he's flashy, right? But I think he's just going to be a solid starter. Like he's going to be a solid to good starter. It's like and this is what Iowa puts out recently. Like you think of like Josie Jewell, right? I mean, back in the day, you're talking about guys like Chad Greenway, who was a fantastic football player. They've had a pretty decent string. I mean, even like guys like Anthony Hitchens, who's a completely different player than what a Jack Campbell is. He was more of a run pursuit type of player. But Iowa has historically put out some decent linebackers, man. So I think this is the next, this is a Josie Jewell brand of football player who didn't go into the 4th round, I think, the year he came out, but he wasn't. I think Jack Campbell's a little bit better of an athlete than Josie Jewell was, but Josie's been a pretty good starter for the Denver Broncos quietly during his career. So I think he's got a easy projection, in my opinion. Does he have a flashy projection? Does he have a high ceiling? No, I would say no to both of those questions, but I'd be surprised if Jack Campbell wasn't playing football in the NFL level a year from now.
Yeah, no, I'm big fan of Jack Campbell. To the point where I don't know why sometimes I'm a little bit drawn to some of these simpler guys, but like the guy gets his job done. It's hard to hate on a guy who has that lunch pail mentality, just gets his job done, does everything right.
I also have a little bit of a soft spot for those guys that are, from the smaller high schools and smaller areas and kind of just get the most out of their ability, and they're a little bit of those late risers. I mean, hey, Troy Anderson was a freaking nature athlete. So like, he's not the perfect comparison for this, but like, how does that kid end up at Montana State, right? How does this kid, I'm sure he probably grew up an Iowa fan, but like, if you look at his recruiting profile, Jack Campbell wasn't very highly recruited at all because he was probably an underdeveloped kid that came out of the state of Iowa. So these kids are players that need to work to get to where they are. So I have a little bit of soft spot for a guy like Jack Campbell. And I will say this, Jack Campbell is also well-liked by the NFL based upon the grades that we have. He had a decent spring grade from the NFL. So he's a good football player.
Is it in congruence with our thoughts?
It is. If I look it up real quick, so I'm going to talk while I'm looking this up because I'm stalling for people that are.
But it's such a shocker though that the NFL loves the big lanky. So this is not a stylistic comparison, but I kind of for shits and giggles pulled up some Jack Lambert highlights. I was like, I just want to peek because he's same frame. I think very similar frame. I think Lambert probably a little faster though, right?
Oh, yeah, Lambert was a freak, man. Yeah, Lambert could move. So he has a grade that would be congruent with a 3rd to 4th round grade. So we're slightly higher, but the NFL still likes him. Yeah.
Okay. Now, conversely, a guy that was highly recruited, Noah Sewell. Wide boy, very wide man, a little roundish, but very freaking wide linebacker. Probably one of the widest in the class. He's got a little Siaki Ika build to him based on how like just broad his shoulders are. No, I'm not saying he's fat. I'm not saying he's fat. I'm sorry to do this, Noah Sewell, but I'm not a fan. And we were talking beforehand, and you were trying to show me some clips of his close down speed. And the 2 games I watched of him, were Ohio State and UCLA, and I felt underwhelmed. I had high expectations for him. He's a name that keeps getting brought up, and then obviously his brother is Penei Sewell, so I'm expecting like a super explosive athlete. Ryan, you want to know what the one thing that kind of irked me a little bit? And
What's that?
I felt like he was loafing. Like I really thought that like he was just at times seemed a bit disinterested. There were some series where he was like pumped up and he was all over the place. But the Ohio
was amped up.
He was amped up. But then sometimes I was just watching him. I'm just like, why does it look like he's loafing? Like after my comparison for motor, like a 99 motor is Will Anderson, and seeing Will Anderson track plays down and chase plays down, like this is like the complete opposite. Like the ball's like if he thinks the play's like close to done, he just was stopping. I just didn't. I was really disappointed with his motor, which sucks to have with a linebacker.
I didn't get those same concerns. I mean, honestly, I feel like maybe we should watch a little bit of film on him, and you can show me because I'm actually genuinely curious. I'm not like being that guy at all right now. Like, I would like.
You're allowed to be that. I give you permission to be that guy.
No, because I mean, because honestly, it's just I didn't see that. You did see that. I'm not saying you're wrong. Maybe I just missed. Maybe we watched. I think we watched. We both definitely watched the Ohio State game. I can't remember. Well, because again, I did this one a little bit earlier in the offseason, but I still have my notes. So maybe we just watched a different game, man, where we're just like, nah.
Yeah, the clips you sent me looked a little bit more promising. The loafing was annoying, and it wasn't anything that happened every single play. It was just it happened a few from time to time, and it was bugging me. But separate from that, I don't think he's like a crazy explosive athlete. Like I think he's a good linebacker, and I think that's where we disagree.
I think that is where we're going to disagree a little bit. So I think Noah Sewell is a better athlete than Jack Campbell to start out with. I guess here, let me hit some of the background real quick. So Noah Sewell is listed at 6'3", 250 pounds. He's out of the state of Utah. Originally a Samoan Oh, you're originally from Samoa, America Samoa. Okay. That is where his family is from. Of course, the younger brother, Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell was actually a lower recruited player as far as the star rankings comparative to Noah Sewell. First time I ever saw him, Joe, he was in an all-star game. I don't think it was like the Under Armour or the Army All-American. I don't think it was either one of those. I think it was a different game. I'm trying to remember what it was. But I saw this big dude at middle linebacker, and I'm like, who the heck is that kid? He looked like a defensive tackle, man. I'm like,
a grown man.
What is happening? And then they flashed it like, yo, this is Noah Sewell. And then I saw him and I'm like, oh, he moves well for his size. And I think we have a difference of opinion on it because especially like the clips that I shared with you, I think this kid's explosive, man. Like I do. I think he moves really well. He's not going to look the same as a Devin White or one of these undersized Will types, right? But like for 6'3", 250, I think the dude moves. And I think he's physical. And I think he has a lot of, I mean, he comes to balance and he strikes, man. Now, his vision, I think, is hit or miss. I think
very inconsistent.
Yeah, I think that there's moments where like he sees it, he trusts it, but then there's also moments where I think that he gets over aggressive against the run and against play action, he'll kind of get taken out of the play. But I'll also say this is that there are some flashes on film from Noah Sewell where he gets his own drop. And I mean, he makes plays on the football. He had like 5 pass breakups and interception last year. Like, I don't know. I think there's a little more upside to Noah Sewell than a Jack Campbell. Is Jack Campbell a better football player today than Noah Sewell? Yes.
100%.
Not arguing that. Would never argue that. But I think the best of Noah Sewell is going to be better than the best of Jack Campbell. He's coming off of a 114 tackle, 8.5 tackle for loss, 4 sacks. So his tackle for loss production, sack production is better than Jack Campbell. Interception, 6 passes defensed, 2 forced fumbles. So he's making plays in a variety of ways. So I am buying into Noah Sewell. I am buying into him. I think that this is a early second round player. I do. I think that this is Noah Sewell. Because I think his upside is. I think he's going to test a lot better than you think, too, Joe. Like I guarantee he runs like. I bet he runs like, and this is going to sound nutty. I bet he runs like 4.62 at 250 pounds.
Wow.
Like I think he's going to run very fast. Yeah, I think he's going to run fast.
There's one play that sticks in my head that I was just like, I didn't think that he moved very well. There was one play, I think it was in the UCLA game. I watched him cut to redirect, and it took him way too long, like way too long for somebody who I think is being characterized like you're saying as explosive. I was watching that happen. I kept rewinding it. And I'm like, man, he cannot cut. He cannot redirect. Maybe that's not his best trait. Maybe he's a little bit more downhill or something, or what is what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, he is. This is my thing though, is that it's going to look different than what it looks like for Jack Campbell. It's going to look different from what it looks like for the two gentlemen we watched on the last episode, obviously, because they're just different body types or different styles of athletes. Like I don't expect Noah Sewell to change direction as quick as a couple of these guys. But I will say this. I think he changes direction better than Jack Campbell. I think Jack Campbell, when he gets going, they're roughly kind of the same linear athletes. Jack's maybe a little bit slower. Okay. But I think that Noah Sewell is more twitchy than Jack Campbell. Like Jack Campbell, for me, is not a guy you want redirecting much. Like that's not him, in my opinion.
That's true. I just don't want either of these guys redirecting. One other qualm with Sewell, I didn't think he was a very good tackler either. I thought that he was just throwing himself. There was a couple plays where he just was kind of like throwing his shoulder and not really wrapping up. Like Campbell really did that. Like you saw the technique, the intent to tackle. You saw that with Toa and Simpson. And I thought with Sewell, he's just so used to being like this boulder wrecking ball that just gets thrown into places. That's not going to work in the NFL. You tried to do that against Derrick Henry, you're getting your ass run over.
I don't disagree with that point. I think we agree with there. He's a highlight tape tackler right now. Like he's trying to make a massive collision he's trying to knock people out. So he's not the wrap up tackler that a Jack Campbell is. Like Jack Campbell, in my opinion, Joe, like Jack Campbell's not going to make a ton of plays in the backfield, but he's not going to miss many tackles. Like his missed tackle percentage is going to be very small. Noah Sewell is much more, I'm going to guess occasionally, and I'm going to try to make a big play, and that will hurt you at times. I agree with that because I think his length is fine, but like I don't think his tackle radius is huge, and I think that he's a gambler as a player. But I do think the traits are better than Campbell. But I completely understand. I would also completely say the floor for Jack Campbell is higher than Noah Sewell. I don't think either one of us disagree on that one.
Yes. I think as much as I try to project, and we were even talking about this the other day, how I don't want to buy too much into traits. And it's kind of funny. I feel like we're doing the opposite here, that I'm not buying into the traits on Sewell. I think I'm hung up on the instincts. I'm hung up on the plays where maybe I'm overreacting a little bit. Maybe I'm saying he was loafing a little bit more than he actually was.
Rack the way you want, sir. Rack the way you want. You're good.
Separate from that, though, I don't think the instincts are good enough for me to declare him as a day 2 player. And he's athletically, maybe he plays better than I'm giving him credit for. I'm willing to concede a little bit of that. And after you showed me some clips that I didn't watch those specific games, and I want to go back and watch another game on him. But this is a 4th round linebacker for me. I think he's got upside, like you're talking about. He's got upside, but just the instincts are concerning. The tackling ability is concerning. I would be very frustrated drafting him, and he's pulling this crap in his rookie season, just throwing himself around and not reacting as well as you would hope.
Hey man, I respect it, Joe. I think if we're looking for the super athletic linebackers, the next show is the one that you want to take a look at in this series. But I respect it, man. We see him a little bit differently. I just see a different caliber of athlete comparative to what you do, but I respect that we see something different.
Well, I think it's good enough to wrap us up on. Ryan,
did you notice that we're watching 2 Iowa linebackers this week, by the way? I don't think we talked about that. That's crazy.
Wait, who's the
Justin
Jacobs? Oh.
Yeah. Yep.
That's going to be interesting.
Who's a little bit of a longer, well, not longer than Jack Campbell, but long, athletic Sam. And we're also watching the Marvin Overshown, who might be the most frustrating watch we'll probably have this cycle. So,
I cannot wait to watch these guys. Okay. All right. I'm going to hop right in to watch Justin Jacobs after this because we're recording this very late on a Wednesday. That's good enough to wrap us up on, though. At Joe DeLeone, at Rise and Draft, at NFL Prospects Pod, Hack City on YouTube, and wherever you're listening in on audio. Talk to you later, folks. Enjoy the rest of your week.